What's up, guys? Vulkan here, and today we're back in Biomutant talking starter builds. So I've been diving through tons of content for Biomutant and figuring out what breeds, mutations, and classes you should choose from the start to give you an idea of what you might like to play. Now, obviously the game isn't out yet, and all of this is subject to change, so please don't take this guide as like a set in stone, this is the final min-max starter for me. But really use this video as a way to figure out what build and class might work best for you depending on your playstyle starting out. So I plan to have a video after the game is out that covers the best classes and how impactful they are in early game, mid game, and end game, so keep an eye out for that after the 25th. Okay, so we're going to get things started with some straightforward play styles. Now, these are fairly basic, but these are extremely popular ways that people love to play in almost every single action RPG out there. Luckily, Biomutant has ways to build those right from the start. So after we talk about those, I do have a few hybrid and some more complex playstyles we can talk about, but for now, we're going to focus on the simpler ones and then move into those a little bit later. So just a disclaimer before we jump in. Now, this is something I noticed going through all the footage. I'm not overly worried about the stat changes during the breed selection because they seem to be a little bit off. Breeds that should have higher increases to certain stats aren't showing as any different from the others. For instance, the Hyla is a tankier class, but doesn't have an increase in armor or health or anything like that. It's the same as everything else. Then the ones that are weaker in melee damage don't have a reduction to melee. Now, this means one of two things. One, the stats aren't working as intended, or that the descriptions are foreshadowing what mutations you can expect your breed to make while you're playing the game and interacting with the world. Now, we don't see the stat changes yet because they don't occur until later on. Now, I'm going to assume this is the case, that we're going to see these changes later on. So if you choose the Rex, for instance, that has an increase in physical and mental, you're going to see increases there later versus a Hyla, who will probably see increases to armor and health later on. Okay, so that was the last thing. Now, to kick things off, I wanted to create an absolutely iconic setup that I know lots of people will most likely enjoy starting with, and that's the two-handed Berserker playstyle. Now, this one is all about maximizing survivability and pushing your melee damage as high as it will go right from the beginning. So what we're going to do for our Berserker melee is we're going to pick the Dumdon or the Hyla breed. Now, choosing Dumdon or Hyla depends on your preference. Dumdon will give you a boost to melee damage, while Hyla will give you more tankiness. Then in terms of our mutations, we want to go a 50-50 strength to vitality ratio. This is going to increase our armor and boost our melee damage. Now, conversely, you could go 100% into strength if you really wanted to, and this is going to boost your starting melee to 100 points at the cost of losing about 18 points in other categories. Now, with this setup, you're going to lose minor skill damage, bartering skill, and movement speed, but at the end of the day, we're a Berserker. We don't really care about that type of stuff. We just want to swing our axe, swing our two-handed weapon, and just crush anything in front of us. So in terms of our class, we're going to take the Sentinel. Now, taking the Sentinel is going to give us a +10 to armor and a slight boost to crit chance to help give more survivability in close quarters because our skills aren't going to do as much damage. Now, our melee, being able to push that all the way to 100 is going to make up for some of that. Now, you could theoretically take Saboteur here if you wanted, but you would lose some of that tankiness as well, and you'd be able to dodge a little bit more, or dual wield if you're really looking for a dual wield style Berserker instead of the two-hander. The next one is the classic Gunslinger, and this is one that I had to put near the top. It just makes the most sense. We've seen so many gameplay clips of our character flying in slow motion through the air, blowing things up, just launching air raids on anything near it. So this one is for you folks out there who love to keep your enemies at a distance, but still dish out some big damage. So to put this one together, we're going to choose the Primal breed from the beginning. Now, this is the optimal one for agility-based classes. According to the description, this one offers more dexterity, perfect for nimble builds. Now, you could argue and go with the Rex or the Hyla here if you wanted more tankiness or intellect, but I think Primal makes the most sense for right now. In terms of your mutations and your stats, 100% agility. And now, agility affects movement speed, but I'm also going to be hedging my bets that certain skills and traits will benefit from how many points per attribute you have. So agility is going to be my choice. And once we get into the actual game, stacking crit on top of this isn't a bad idea either. I mean, a high crit, high agility Gunslinger sounds like a fantastic one to put together. Now, in terms of your class, you want to go Commando or Deadeye. Now, there's a couple different reasons for this. If you go Deadeye, Deadeye is going to give you a skill that reloads your ranged weapons instantly, and your next magazine gets a plus 20% damage increase. Now, one thing to take note of here is that we don't know how long this cooldown is, or if this is something that works every time, or if you have to build up a certain amount of energy. We just don't know enough about it. We don't know if we can use it frequently or infrequently, so there's a lot of unknowns there. In terms of Commando, Commando increases all ranged weapon damage by 10% for a duration. Now, I don't believe this is a passive, but if it is, I would take Commando no brainer. I mean, 100% uptime on a 10% increase to ranged weapon damage is, I would take that flat. No questions asked. So that is the Gunslinger. Now, there are some different kind of tweaks you can make if you want to do a gun mage. You could go into intellect a little bit more than agility. You could go Rex instead of going primal. And that's going to give you some good kind of balance between intellect, so skill damage, and physical damage. So that is something you can kind of tweak as well. But let's go ahead and move into our next one, and that is the Storm Mage. Now, the Storm Mage is going to be one of the easiest starters to build because it's just so straightforward. You take a breed who's a master at intellect, and then you maximize your intellect stat, and then choose the only caster class available. This is going to allow you to throw ball lightning at the start. It's going to boost your energy regen to let you cast those skills more often, and it's just a great starter build in my opinion. So in order to build this one, we're going to go with the FIP. Now, the FIP is probably one of the ugliest starting breeds we have here, but it's also geared towards intellect and maximizing skill and special damage. So if we want to go with the caster, this one's going to give us our biggest boost at the start. In terms of our mutations, we want to go all intellect. Now, intellect, right, it's a no-brainer here, pun intended, and it gives boosts to our skill power, energy, and energy regen, which is perfect for chain casting those skills. So I'm hoping we get to see some cool items that kind of work with our energy pool as well to help kind of push our damage even further, but we'll have to see once we get into the game. I tried to push that on Twitter a little bit. I was like, hey, in terms of attributes and perks and stuff like that, what are we looking at? And THQ Nordic replied, and they were like, you'll just have to wait and see. So right now we're going to be kept in the dark unless they announce something before the game comes out. And in terms of class, you probably guessed it, it's the Psi-Freak. Now, this is because the Psi-Freak is the only starting class with a castable skill called Sparkball, and this one makes a great starter. And you pair that with the passive energy regen, it's a great combo to begin with. You'll be able to dish out some ball lightning damage and deal damage early on with skills as well as at ranged, and this is the perfect setup if you like to play a ranged caster, a wizard, a warlock. So if you like any of those, this is a great place to start. Next up is the Rogue. Now, when I think of a Rogue, I think dive gameplay, right? Being able to ambush, dish out big damage, and then disappear very quickly. Now, luckily, we have some ways to achieve this from the start without having to pick up that pre-order mercenary class, which we'll be talking about in a different video. This playstyle is for those people who really don't mind a high-risk, high-reward character who moves super quick and is set up for dual-wielding different ailments to lock down enemies. So we're going to go with the primal breed right out of the gate. Like our Gunslinger, this one is a perfect fit for the Rogue because it gives boost to movement speed as well as anything with agility. But here, I mean, more movement speed makes it easier to dive into combat, deal damage, and then retreat. So in terms of our mutation, you guessed it, all agility. Agility pushes that movement speed even further, so going this direction makes the most sense. And like last time, I'm assuming there's going to be some perks for going into agility deeper than other stats. And lastly, our class is going to be the Saboteur. Now, Saboteur has the ability to dual wield and a reduction to your dodge cost, and this makes this class perfect for dive gameplay. You can equip two completely different one-handers with this passive trait, and you can put together some really cool affliction combos. You could have a weapon that deals cold damage and then another that deals biohazard to freeze your enemies and poison them at the same time. So this playstyle is all about getting close to dish out some huge damage, lock down your enemies, continue dealing some sustain, then dodge out to keep dealing damage from a distance. So if you like ninjas, this is the setup for you, and this one is probably one of the ones I'm going to be going for, not first, but earlier on maybe another playthrough, because this sounds just like an absolute blast. Okay, so next up is one of the more hybrid or complex setups, which is not really complex compared to other games, but it's more of a hybrid. And this is the Battle Mage. Now, the Battle Mage is a personal favorite of mine. I absolutely love the classic Battle Mage kind of look and feel and play style. Weaving spells and melee together is super satisfying. It makes combat more engaging in my opinion. And luckily in Biomutant, we have some inklings of how this would work with a breed that's a hybrid between intellect and physical. Then we take maximum strength for boost to melee damage and combine it with a surprise class to get the most out of our setup. So with this setup, you're going to be casting ball lightning right from the start and smashing enemies in the face, and it's going to be so good. Okay, so we're going to go for the Rex breed right out of the gate. Rex claims it's the ultimate balance between physical and mental, which to me sounds like a hybrid between melee and caster. And having this strength makes it a natural fit for a battle mage since we're going to be weaving together those melee damage and skill damage. Now in terms of mutation, we're going to go all strength here. Now I'm going full strength, right, because I want to boost my melee damage since we're going to be in close quarters for the most part. Now there is some wiggle room here, right? You can try to go half intellect, half strength, but the issue is you're going to snag a lot of agility because that mutation is between those two stats. So if you want to go straight intellect instead, you can also do that. Just know you'll be losing about 18 points of melee damage right at the start. And in terms of our class, we're going to go for the Psi-Freak. So by dropping tons of points into melee and then choosing Psi-Freak, we're going to get the best of both worlds. Now this playstyle is for players who, like I said, really like to kind of intertwine spells, skills, melee combat. They like to fight in close quarters. Plus with a boost to strength, we might be able to unlock some pretty cool skill combinations later in the game. And you can kind of stack on top of this some ailments if you really wanted to. And like I said, this one is a favorite of mine. I try to make this in every single action RPG I can, so hopefully this setup will work really well, and in Biomutant, it'll excel. Okay, so we have two more. Now the next one is our one-shot or high crit build. And this one is for players who just love those massive crit numbers, right? Or the potential to like one-shot enemies. So in Biomutant, we have a luck stat, and that luck stat boosts critical chance, and will most likely have some crazy combinations in crafting that'll be able to push our crit damage and our crit chance even further. So if you're someone who like loves to run a glass cannon style character, this one is definitely right up your alley. So we're going to choose the Rex breed. Now for our high crit build, choosing the Rex makes the most sense because we want to get some boost to that physical damage for our range damage. And we also get those minor boosts to intellect, which help with our skills and might even boost our starting skill called Perfect Reload. I'm not entirely sure how intellect works with the 20% damage increase. So in terms of mutations, we're choosing intellect. We want to get the boost to skills we're wanting to use. That way we can really dish out some major damage. And I'm kind of cautious if this is also going to affect our super Wung Fu or our bullet time, but we'll have to wait till the full game comes out so we can actually figure that out. Now, in terms of our class, we're going with the Deadeye. Deadeye makes a ton of sense. So with the Deadeye class and a massive amount of starting points into intellect, we can try to abuse that perfect reload skill to get a huge damage increase that'll stack on top of our base crit chance. And then hopefully we'll also see some sniper rifles we can put together that have a high base crit chance or crit multiplier to push this build even further. Now, one thing to note is you cannot affect your luck stat right from the beginning. There is no mutation you can choose to push that up. I really wish there was. That would be really cool, but there isn't. So we're gonna have to wait until we get into the game and start getting pieces of gear that have luck on them to boost our crit chance. So keep that in mind that you can't directly affect that right from the start. Okay, so our last class is very unique. It's very niche. There's probably not a lot of people out there who are going to start with this one, but this one is called the Diplomat. And this is for players who like to attempt a no-kill or a minimal kill playthrough, in which most of their challenge comes from working with PCs in the game and figuring out how to get through things without just murdering everything in front of you. So with Biomutant, we aren't entirely sure if Charisma will let us completely skip some conflicts, but it definitely helps with dialogue options and bartering skills to reduce cost at like shops and other things. Now, this isn't my recommended playstyle for starters or for people that are just kind of like diving into the game. But if you want to give this a shot, then maximizing your luck and charisma are 100% key. So with luck, you have a higher chance at loot and criticals if you need to fight, so that's something that kind of comes into play. Okay, so in terms of your breed, we're going to go with the Murgle. Now, this is the first time we've chosen Murgle, and that's because this one loses intellect, and it's more geared towards charisma and manipulation rather than combat. So I don't foresee people choosing this one too often for playstyles focusing on fights, but honestly, who knows? It could be one of the better breeds out there once we have our hands on the game, but for now, on paper, it looks like it's purely for talking, dialogue, things like that. Now, in terms of our mutation and our stats, we're going to go charisma. Taking full charisma pushes that stat to about 100 and is going to give us some massive boost to bartering and dialogue options. So this is entirely key for what we're trying to do here. And for our class, we're gonna go ahead and take the Saboteur. So by taking the Saboteur, you're gonna have an easier time dodging, since you're not gonna deal as much damage as other setups because we're not geared towards DPS. We're not geared towards dishing out damage. We're geared towards talking, manipulation, things like that. So being able to dodge and stay out of conflict or kind of have that dive gameplay that the rogue has is going to be key to surviving. Now, this one makes the most sense, right? Saboteur. But honestly, you can choose just about any class for this setup since we aren't taking advantage of the perks too much. So like I said, I don't see a lot of people using Diplomat, but it is out there for people who really like this style of play. Okay guys, so that actually wraps up this video. So I want to hear from you. What setup are you going to choose at the start? Is it one of these, something completely different? Comment below, let's talk about it. I'm extremely excited to hear what you guys have to say and what you guys think about some of these different kind of potential combinations that we can start the game with. But as always, thank you guys so much for the support. This has been Vulkan, and I will talk to you guys next time.